Section 7 of the Letters of Jane Austen. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Elizabeth Klett. Letter 15. 13 Queen Square, Sunday, June 2nd. My dear Cassandra, I am obliged to you for 2 letters, one from yourself and the other from Mary, for of the latter I knew nothing till on the receipt of yours yesterday, when the pigeon basket was examined and I received my due. As I have written to her since the time which ought to have brought me hers, I suppose she will consider herself, as I choose to consider her, still in my debt. I will lay out all the little judgment I have in endeavouring to get such stockings for Anna as she will approve, but I do not know that I shall execute Martha's commission at all, for I am not fond of ordering shoes, and at any rate they shall all have flat heels. What must I tell you of Edward, truth or falsehood? I will try the former, and you may choose for yourself another time. He was better yesterday than he had been for 2 or 3 days before, about as well as while he was at Steventon. He drinks at the Hetling pump, is to bathe to-morrow, and try electricity on Tuesday. He proposed the latter himself to Dr. Fellows, who made no objection to it, but I fancy we are all unanimous in expecting no advantage from it. At present I have no great notion of our staying here beyond the month. I heard from Charles last week; they were to sail on Wednesday. My mother seems remarkably well. My uncle overwalked himself at first, and can now only travel in a chair, but is otherwise very well. My cloak is come home. I like it very much, and can now exclaim with delight, like J. Bond at Hay Harvest, "This is what I have been looking for all these 3 years." I saw some gauzes in a shop in Bath Street yesterday at only 4s. a yard, but they were not so good or so pretty as mine. Flowers are very much worn, and fruit is still more the thing. Elizabeth has a bunch of strawberries, and I have seen grapes, cherries, plums, and apricots. There are likewise almonds and raisins, French plums, and tamarinds at the grocer's, but I have never seen any of them in hats. A plum or greengage would cost 3s., cherries and grapes about 5, I believe, but this is at some of the dearest shops. My aunt has told me of a very cheap one, near Walcot Church, to which I shall go in quest of something for you. I have never seen an old woman at the pump-room. Elizabeth has given me a hat, and it is not only a pretty hat, but a pretty style of hat too. It is something like Eliza's, only instead of being all straw, half of it is narrow purple ribbon. I flatter myself, however, that you can understand very little of it from this description. Heaven forbid that I should ever offer such encouragement to explanations as to give a clear one on any occasion myself. But I must write no more of this. I spent Friday evening with the Mapletons, and was obliged to submit to being pleased in spite of my inclination. We took a very charming walk from 6 to 8 up Beacon Hill, and across some fields, to the village of Charlcombe, which is sweetly situated in a little green valley, as a village with such a name ought to be. Marianne is sensible and intelligent, and even Jane, considering how fair she is not unpleasant. We had a Miss North and a Mr. Gould of our party; the latter walked home with me after tea. He is a very young man, just entered Oxford, wears spectacles, and has heard that Evelina was written by Dr. Johnson. I am afraid I cannot undertake to carry Martha's shoes home, for, though we had plenty of room in our trunks when we came, we shall have many more things to take back, and I must allow besides for my packing. There is to be a grand gala on Tuesday evening in Sydney Gardens, a concert with illuminations and fireworks. To the latter Elizabeth and I look forward with pleasure, and even the concert will have more than its usual charm for me, as the gardens are large enough for me to get pretty well beyond the reach of its sound. In the morning Lady Willoughby is to present the colours to some corps, or yeomanry, or other, in the Crescent, and that such festivities may have a proper commencement, we think of going too. I am quite pleased with Martha and Mrs. Lefroy for wanting the pattern of our caps, but I am not so well pleased with you for giving it to them. Some prevailing wish is necessary to the animation of everybody's mind, and in gratifying this you leave them to form some other, which will not probably be half so innocent. I shall not forget to write to Frank. Duty and love, etc. Yours affectionately, Jane. My uncle is quite surprised at my hearing from you so often, but as long as we can keep the frequency of our correspondence from Martha's uncle, we will not fear our own. Letter 16. 13 Queen Square, Tuesday, June 11th. My dear Cassandra, your letter yesterday made me very happy. I am heartily glad that you have escaped any share of the impurities at Deane, and not sorry, as it turns out, that our stay here has been lengthened. I feel tolerably secure of our getting away next week, though it is certainly possible that we may remain till Thursday the 27th. I wonder what we shall do with all our intended visits this summer. I should like to make a compromise with Alderstrop, Harden, and Bookham, that Martha's spending the summer at Steventon should be considered as our respective visits to them all. Edward has been pretty well for this last week, and as the waters have never disagreed with him in any respect, we are inclined to hope that he will derive advantage from them in the end. Everybody encourages us in this expectation, for they all say that the effects of the waters cannot be negative, and many are the instances in which their benefit is felt afterwards more than on the spot. He is more comfortable here than I thought he would be, and so is Elizabeth, though they will both, I believe, be very glad to get away, the latter especially, which one can't wonder at somehow. So much for Mrs. Piozzi. I had some thoughts of writing the whole of my letter in her style, but I believe I shall not. Though you have given me unlimited powers concerning your sprig, I cannot determine what to do about it, and shall therefore in this and in every other future letter continue to ask your further directions. We have been to the cheap shop, and very cheap we found it, but there are only flowers made there, no fruit, and as I could get 4 or 5 very pretty sprigs of the former for the same money which would procure only one Orléans plum, in short, could get more for 3 or 4 shillings than I could have means of bringing home, I cannot decide on the fruit till I hear from you again. Besides, I cannot help thinking that it is more natural to have flowers grow out of the head than fruit. What do you think on that subject? I would not let Martha read First Impressions again upon any account, and am very glad that I did not leave it in your power. She is very cunning, but I saw through her design. She means to publish it from memory, and one more perusal must enable her to do it. As for Fitzalbini, when I get home, she shall have it, as soon as she ever will own that Mr. Elliot is handsomer than Mr. Lance, that fair men are preferable to black, for I mean to take every opportunity of routing out her prejudices. Benjamin Portal is here. How charming that is! I do not know exactly why, but the phrase followed so naturally that I could not help putting it down. My mother saw him the other day, but without making herself known to him. I am very glad you liked my lace, and so are you, and so is Martha, and we are all glad together. I have got your cloak home, which is quite delightful, as delightful at least as half the circumstances which are called so. I do not know what is the matter with me to day, but I cannot write quietly. I am always wandering away into some exclamation or other. Fortunately, I have nothing very particular to say. We walked to Weston one evening last week, and I liked it very much. Liked what very much? Weston? No, walking to Weston. I have not expressed myself properly, but I hope you'll understand me. We have not been to any public place lately, nor performed anything out of the common daily routine of No. 13 Queen Square, Bath. But to-day we were to have dashed away at a very extraordinary rate by dining out, had it not so happened that we did not go. Edward renewed his acquaintance lately with Mr. Evelyn, who lives in the Queen's Parade, and was invited to a family dinner, which I believe at first Elizabeth was rather sorry at his accepting, but yesterday Mrs. Evelyn called on us, and her manners were so pleasing that we liked the idea of going very much. The Biggs would call her a nice woman. But Mr. Evelyn, who was indisposed yesterday, is worse to-day, and we are put off. It is rather impertinent to suggest any household care to a housekeeper, but I just venture to say that the coffee mill will be wanted every day while Edward is at Steventon, as he always drinks coffee for breakfast. Fanny desires her love to you, her love to grandpapa, her love to Anna, and her love to Hannah. The latter is particularly to be remembered. Edward desires his love to you, to grandpapa, to Anna, to little Edward, to Aunt James and Uncle James, and he hopes all your turkeys and ducks and chicken and guinea fowls are very well, and he wishes you very much to send him a printed letter, and so does Fanny, and they both rather think they shall answer it. Dr. Gardner was married yesterday to Mrs. Percy and her 3 daughters. Now I will give you the history of Mary's Veil, in the purchase of which I have so considerably involved you that it is my duty to economize for you in the flowers. I had no difficulty in getting a muslin veil for half a guinea, and not much more in discovering afterwards that the muslin was thick, dirty, and ragged, and therefore would by no means do for a united gift. I changed it consequently as soon as I could, and considering what a state my imprudence had reduced me to, I thought myself lucky in getting a black lace one for 16s. I hope the half of that sum will not exceed greatly what you had intended to offer upon the altar of sister-in-law affection. Yours affectionately, Jane. They do not seem to trouble you much from Manydown. I have long wanted to quarrel with them, and I believe I shall take this opportunity. There is no denying that they are very capricious, for they like to enjoy their elder sister's company when they can. End of Section 7.